more resources, visit rym.org.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
The Local Youth Worker is a daily podcast that's centered on 5 questions each week. Ranging from the practical to the professional, we're looking for answers to the questions you're asking. Whether you're in full-time, part-time, or even volunteer youth ministry, this podcast is for you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Local Youth Worker, a daily podcast brought to you by Reformed Youth Ministries. I'm your host, John Parrott. All this week, we'll be talking to Augusta Fair. Looking forward to talking with you. Augusta is the student ministry assistant at First Presbyterian Church in Jackson, Mississippi. And Augusta, how long have you been there?
I've been there about 3 years.
All right. So been there for 3 years, and you were married to Bailey. And how long have y'all been married?
We've been married in October for 3 years.
Okay, good job. I should have warned you that I was going to ask that, because sometimes I've asked people how long they've been married, and they struggle a little bit. So you got it. That was
It's
good.
because I know how long I've worked, but I know how long I've been married.
There
So
you
that's
go.
it.
Okay, yeah. And Augusta, where are you from originally, and how did you, I guess, end up at First Pres? Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
So I grew up on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, so Pascagoula, Mississippi. And after Hurricane Katrina, my family relocated to Jackson and actually went to Pear Orchard with John as my youth minister. So
That's right.
And then went to Ole Miss and started interning at First Pres just through some friendships that I had from friends that were high school friends and Ole Miss friends. And kind of by the end of college, still was thinking about other career options, and got a call from someone on staff, and they were like, "Don't you want to come work in youth ministry?" And I was like, "I don't know about that." And just the more I prayed about it, the more I thought about it, the more it became apparent that the Lord was calling me to full-time youth ministry. So that's kind of how it happened.
Great. Yeah. It's great having you in the area, and looking forward to being able to talk to you and ask you some of these questions. As those who listen to the show regularly know, we're starting our second season and have started that, and the theme of this season is frequently asked questions. And so, Augusta, what we've been doing to start off is just asking, what is the most frequently asked question you've received from students? Because we know that, from different contexts, people are going to get different questions. And so we're interested to hear, there's going to be some similarities, but some differences. So with that being said, what is the most frequently asked question you've received from students?
Yeah, so I would say that often I see in my context that kids, or at least the girls, do not ask that many questions. I don't know if it's that they're not reflecting or if they're busy. I'm not really sure what it is, but I do get some. But I would say for the most part, I think that a lot of times they don't ask questions.
So are you saying that it's hard to engage them, to get them to ask any questions, to have conversation with you? Is that kind of what you're saying?
No, I feel like it's more just like I ask them a lot of questions, but getting them, just a child coming to me with a question or a student coming to me with a question about something that they've been thinking about or wondering about. They sometimes it doesn't seem that they're wondering about that much. And that might sound odd, but and like I said, it's probably the context that I'm in. But when I do every now and then get some, and I'd say that if it's a theological question, we've got some kids who would ask really deep theological questions that I don't know the answer to. But I would say that most are things like you see a tragedy happen in the community, a child dies at a young age, a car wreck, or my parents are getting a divorce. People are really mean to me. I have no friends. And just that question in general is, what do I do with suffering? And why is there suffering? And I think that's something that we see.
Yeah. And goodness, that is, that's a question, I've gotten from students, and I mean, it is extremely complex to begin to try to deal with that because, it seems like inevitably you get into that of, well, why did God allow evil? And like you said, why does God allow suffering? And those can be some very complex and weighty discussions, and some that are just, not easy, quick answers. And so
just, the jar, those things are jarring. So it kind of wakes them up from whatever they're in, it's kind of asleep as they walk through life, not asking questions. I think these jarring situations make you ask, why is this happening?
Mm-hmm.
And something else I see is, as far as behavior goes, I think that sometimes they're asking, like, how far is too far in terms of, like, my boyfriend or my girlfriend, or random boys and random girls, or drugs, alcohol, vaping, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Yes, marijuana, all those things. Yeah. So when you do have a student come to you and kind of talk to you about just questions on suffering, where do you typically try to go with them? How do you respond initially when they come to you with, like you said, it's parents getting a divorce, or it's a death of a loved one or a friend? What do you typically, how do you typically respond?
Well, I mean, I would say, first of all, I usually feel pretty broken for them. I just feel, in just the weight of what they're feeling. I try to put myself in their shoes. I think it's easy sometimes, especially with more minor things, like, oh, well, people are making fun of you, get over it. I think that it's really important to get either, whether it's sympathy from my past experience or some empathy, and really move into where they are, and try to understand what they're feeling if we can't. So that's like the first thing I would say that I do. And then I think really pointing them to the cross. And I think it's hard to say, but a lot of times my answer for them is, like, I don't have an answer. I think that we're living in between the garden and redemption. And the heartbreaking answer is that the world's broken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that leads again into, like, why is there suffering? And that's the sin in the world that we see.
But you're doing two things that I think are very helpful, and we need to think about, as one, just being physically present, with someone, especially in the midst of tragedy and suffering. I mean, the Lord uses that mightily. And kind of going along with that, sometimes we don't need to feel like we need to have an answer. Or sometimes we don't need to necessarily say anything. That when people are hurting, I mean, obviously sometimes we can say things that are foolish and that can actually hurt and make them, hurt even more. And so I don't think we need to move past or overlook the importance of just our physical presence of being with someone. I mean, that's something.
Not feeling the pressure to have an answer. That's freeing too.
Absolutely, because I think there is that pressure for sure, especially with youth workers. We think, okay, look, we're the ones discipling these students, these middle schoolers, these high schoolers. They look up to us. I think there's a lot of wisdom in saying, and I think we've said it on this podcast before, of just saying, I don't know, or that's a good question, or this scenario you're talking about here. I mean, look, this is really difficult. This is really hard, and I don't know if I've got an easy solution or an easy answer to this. So I think that's big that it's a good perspective to have on this.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Like that's a huge thing. Going to a funeral way before a child's time, that kind of thing. Just, I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, we know. I mean, the scriptures say, when you think of the Sermon on the Mount, blessed are those who mourn, for they should be comforted. I mean, there is a reality to the fact that, yes, we think back to the Garden of Perfection, and we know that those who are in Christ are headed to glory. And so any kind of suffering is foreign to us. We know we weren't created for suffering. And so it's difficult, obviously, when we go through that. But again, looking to the promises of Christ, that we will be comforted. But that's a promise too, that there is going to be mourning, there is going to be sadness, because we're on this side of glory. And so, sometimes we want to try to alleviate that, and it's not necessarily the Lord's intention to alleviate it in that moment. That, like you said, some of these students, because of where they are. They aren't reflecting as much, and so suffering and pain can move them to reflection. And we know that the Lord often uses pain and suffering to help them do that.
Yeah.
So that's good.
I mean, I said that something that sticks out to me a lot is that when kids aren't asking questions, sometimes their behavior and the things they do are still asking questions that are internal. And I think that I see a lot of just, am I enough in general in a performance-based society? Am I pretty enough? Am I good enough at this? Am I popular enough? Am I witty enough? Do you like me? It's just those are internal questions, and I think their behavior shows those questions, whether they're asking them out loud or not.
Absolutely, and that's something I'm pretty sure for the next several podcasts I'm going to be referencing the movie Eighth Grade. And Augusta, I know you were in on that discussion when several youth workers met up at the coffee shop to discuss that movie. But I mean, yeah, that entire storyline just kind of screamed that. You know, you had this girl who was longing for acceptance and wanting to belong, and wanting to be liked by others. And Kayla, I believe is her name, and she had a YouTube channel, and asking people to subscribe and like and all those things. And so, yeah, like you said, sometimes these students aren't asking those questions, but their behavior and what they're doing is showing, there's a question behind the surface, and like you said, there's that longing for acceptance that they have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I guess this is good. Like you said, there's a lot of questions you receive on different ends of the spectrum. Some of these very, very difficult, very sobering to wrestle with. Anything else you want to add before we close this out?
No, I think that's great.
All right. Thanks, Augusta.
Thanks, John.